Hey, so my name's Elton, and this is a mini-series on my channel where I'll be taking a look at artifacts that have similar effects and uses, specifically for characters who can utilize them well, but have to go through some sort of constant debate of which one to choose. I hope to shed some light on how these sets differ and whether the trade-offs that each of them have are actually worth it, as well as how well units can proc these effects properly. However, like always, I have to give a disclaimer. I'm not here to calculate percentages or crunch the numbers on any character's damage output. I am only here to explain how these artifacts work, how well they work in the current state of the game, and how well these effects can be taken advantage of. I am not here to shame, humiliate, or insult anyone who chooses one set over another for their builds. I also want to say that I do compile my information from the most up-to-date guides from the Kaching Main's website, as they have a plethora of very helpful information, so if you're wondering where I got all this knowledge, I got it from there. Now, with all that said and done, welcome to Artifact Antagony. Healing is something that has always been an interesting topic in the game, simply due to the fact that it is something that embodies a bit of the Goldilocks effect. There's a certain amount of healing that a unit needs to provide, but if they provide too much healing without giving anything else, then there really isn't much of a point, specifically, generally speaking, of course. Healers in Genshin constantly need to go through this back and forth of too much healing or not enough support elsewhere. It needs to be just right. And this is paralleled perfectly with these two sets. Maiden Beloved is an artifact set that grants a 15% healing bonus to the wielder, while the 4-piece effect increases the healing of all party members receive by 20% for 10 seconds, after the wielder uses their elemental skill or burst. And as for the Hued Clam, it also gives a 15% healing bonus to the wielder. However, its 4-piece effect is a very long blurb of words, so I'm just going to summarize it. Essentially, when the equipped character heals in any way, a little bubble will appear next to the wielder for 3 seconds. The bubble will gather up all the healing in those 3 seconds, with a max of 30 HP healed, and then release it in an AoE explosion around the active character that deals physical damage. Only one of these bubbles can be produced every 3.5 seconds, and while the damage that the bubble does cannot be boosted by physical damage bonus, character level, or elemental mastery, it can be increased by reactions like superconduct, due to its physical resistance shredding. And finally, this 4-piece effect can be triggered even when the character is off-field. So as we can clearly tell, these two sets are strictly meant for dedicated healers. They're both meant to help healers do what they do best, heal. But there's a stark difference in these two. Maiden Beloved is a set that focuses on solely increasing the amount of healing produced and the amount of healing received, fortifying defensive utility by ensuring strong and consistent replenishment of HP. Hued has streamlined healing into additional damage, allowing the set healer to partake in the joyous revelries of destroying enemies. This obviously showcases that Maiden is a defensive geared set pushed to the limit, whereas Hued trails the border of support and sub-DPS very lightly. It also tackles another point of contention, pushing for offense. Healers are defensive units that aren't meant to deal damage due to their role for a multitude of reasons, and in a multitude of teams as well. However, the healer that has this set equipped must be able to heal consistently almost all the time, allowing for the bubble to pop and deal damage steadily. And finally, there's something I need to discuss about healers in general, and that is what makes a good healer. A good healer isn't a healer that needs to heal party members quickly or heal with the biggest numbers in one interval. The best healers in the game are currently not the ones that can heal the most or have 100% uptime, and some even drain their own HP to do so. This is because it's not all about getting everybody healed back to full. It's about being able to heal sufficiently to keep everyone alive enough while also providing unique and useful support through talents, elemental reactions, and artifact sets that they can proc. There's a stark difference between the quote-unquote good healers and the quote-unquote bad healers. Good healers heal anywhere from just enough to get everyone by to 100% uptime, while also providing something else that's absolutely priceless. From attack buffing to shielding to being a driver of a broken team, all of these good healers have something else to offer other than healing numbers. Bad healers focus on overhealing and honestly don't really give any or give pretty negligible support, which sometimes can even bring downsides of their own to the team, such as not producing energy and buffing super niche damage, or in certain cases, getting everyone frozen really often. Additionally, As long as your party members have a decent chunk of health that's not in the red, with a few exceptions of course, then they don't really need any more healing. And if they are still perishing against your opponent's relentless onslaughts, then most of the time it's due to a lack of shielding, dodging/iframing, or your character's just not being enough of a high level, therefore lacking in some pretty useful and needed innate health and defense. So all that extra healing pretty much goes to waste. This means that since there's always enough healing provided from dedicated healers to begin with, then the option will be to always prefer Ocean Hued over Maiden, unless Ocean Hued doesn't really suit that character. I'll not only be talking about these two sets, but also healing as well. Understanding these artifacts require understanding the ins and outs of the current healers available in the game. By gaining a deeper understanding of this, explaining the usage of Ocean Hued and Maiden will become a lot more clear. Moving on to the characters, we have a lot to go through, 13 in fact. I'll be going through them in 5 separate groups to help categorize them better. Keep in mind, I'll only be going through dedicated healers, meaning characters who can heal themselves and other teammates within their base kits at C0, so characters like Goro, Kaya, and Dea won't count. Up first are the quote-unquote best healers. These healers offer additional abilities within their kits and or interactions in the game that are extremely crucial. I made a video about these 3 a while ago, so I'll link it down below if you want to check it out and see me go more in depth about it. To quickly summarize without delving too much and too long into it, here they are. Bennett is the ultimate healer. He can quickly heal any character on his burst to up to 70%, and his massive attack buff is a redonkulous advantage to any damage dealer who scales off of that. That paired with his reliable energy generation makes him extremely valuable to so many teams. However, when it comes to healing, his healing only goes to 70%, so maxing out the cap for the bubble for Ocean Hued is very difficult to do, since his burst stops healing the active character once they're healed to that threshold. Maiden ultimately wins out in terms of getting out more healing, allowing for the character to reach the 70% mark faster, although his best set is obviously Noblesse due to how it can buff even more attack. As for Kuki, her healing is very consistent due to her skill uptime, and only gets more consistent with her C2. This means that her healing is very reliable. However, her skill only ticks every 1.5 seconds, so the bubble would theoretically at most be able to gather healing from 2 ticks. This is a very unreliable way of filling up the bubble, especially since Kuki's style of healing is meant to be a short, reliable stints over long periods of time. Not to mention, Kuki is the frontrunner of her own broken type of damage dealing team with Hyper Bloom, which is more dependable and powerful than the damage from the bubble of Ocean Hued. So while Kuki would favor EM based sets more, she would probably be better on Maiden than Ocean Hued. However, in addition to that, Tenacity of the Millilith is also another viable option on her. As for Kokomi, her set is definitely Ocean Hued. This set was made for her and it works perfectly for her since most of her teams make her a driver for a portion of the time. This portion of the time is during her burst, in which her normal and charge attacks allow her to proc healing for each hit, filling up the bubbles super easily. It is worth mentioning that the Tenacity of the Millilith set is another viable artifact for her, but mainly in freeze teams where Ayaka and Ganyu's burst can snapshot off of the buff. The next set of healers that I'll be bringing into the discussion are the units that double as shielders. This set of healers inherently double down on their roles as defensive units, locking them in the role they were given. Baiju is an interesting case as he provides the least uptime in healing out of all 3 shielders. His skill heals after it returns to the active character, so Ocean Hued is viable for him, and his burst will heal the active character every 2.5 seconds when a shield is destroyed or generated. So Ocean Hued is favored over Maiden. However, his best in slot as a support set is definitely a 4-piece of Deepwood Memories. Moving on to Diona, her best in slot set is usually a 2-piece of any healing bonus, HP, and or energy recharge. This means that neither Ocean Hued or Maiden wins here since they would have to be working together on this. Alternatively, you could put Diona on a Noblesse set, which would be extremely beneficial for freeze teams, and does sync up perfectly with her 12-second burst duration. And as for the last healer, Shielder, Noelle is probably the most interesting out of all the healers. This is due to the fact that unlike some healer drivers, she's actually a true damage dealer. And when it comes to sets, Ocean Hued and Maiden don't even begin to come into the conversation, since her geo damage and healing draw from the same stat, defense. That means that as long as she builds her for damage, her healing will also follow as well. This means that sets like Husk of Opulent Dreams, and even alternative sets like Gladiators and Retracing Bullide, as long as they have defense stats, can make Noelle's healing perform really well. And the third category is of Yao Yao, Sayu, and Jean. These healers are in a category that are sort of a combo of being able to provide not much else, but just really healing. If anything, they're the healers that are just generally okay, but don't really give too much support in any direction. Yayo's healing is a very consistent and reliable way of applying Dendron to enemies, pretty well due to the frequency of Yogui's attacks. But outside of that, there really isn't anything else she can do. Her C1 is an interesting form of help, as it restores stamina and can grant Dendro damage bonus, but that only benefits Dendro main DPSs such as Tignari, Alhaitham, and maybe Nahida if you choose to play her on field. And since her healing is very consistent due to her skill and burst, she can be equipped with Ocean Hued. But again, since she's a Dendro support unit, she can help her teammates more if she's on Deepwood instead. As for Sayu and Jean, these two are pretty similar since they're both animal healers who both scale off of attack. Both are pretty similar in how their healing works. They both summon a field that heals the character within that AoE and deal anima damage, but with a few differences. Sayu's field is much wider and can be moved around, while Jean's does an initial burst of massive healing and then applies anima to the active character within it. Both healers can't really use Ocean Hued all that well since the healing intervals are very small and can't fill up the bubble quick enough. Not to mention, we all know how broken Viridescent is by now, and putting it on an anima support unit is definitely the way to go. Fourth set of healers are the ones that have a niche strength and support, and while it can be useful, is ultimately too specialized to be generally helpful. Yori's specialized ability is that she's able to refund energy when the pulse of her burst heals the active character. They have to be connected to the genie lamp for this to happen. Their energy restored can be spread out to different characters, and the amount restored goes up per talent level increase. Now, this energy restoration is direct, but it is ultimately very minimal. Additionally, if there's a certain character you want to obtain all the energy restored, typically the main DPS, then the character would have to stay on field for the whole 12 seconds. That would be very time consuming and doesn't necessarily work out in certain team rotations. So if anything, Dori can be given Ocean Hued over Maiden, although if the active character is not connected to the genie lamp, then they won't receive healing at all. So it ultimately depends on the distance. And as long as you stack HP and keep in close proximity, you should be able to proc Ocean Hued consistently. However, an alternative to this would be the Noblesse set, as the duration of her burst is the same as the 4-piece effect for Noblesse. And her healing would still be sufficient enough to keep herself and her teammates alive. As for Mika, I actually completely forgot that he was a healer for a moment, simply because he was super hyped up to be Physical's poster child of support, but nevertheless he happens to heal with his burst. Now initially, it would seem like he belongs in the upper echelon of healers, being a unit that can keep his team alive while also offering a powerful supportive capability. However, due to the fact that Physical is a very under-supported type of damage, along with the fact that Mika doesn't even work with Eula properly, who is, by the way, the leading unit of physical damage, it's pretty clear that he can't be classified as such. And so we get to the artifacts. Surprisingly, Mika is actually one of the few units who can reliably use Ocean Hued. And with him being in a physical damage-oriented team, Superconduct would be triggered often, leading to the higher bubble damage. However, it is worth noting that Noblesse is the better option for him, but only if there's no other unit on the team who already has Noblesse equipped. And the final slot of healers are a duo that do essentially nothing else but give healing to their team. And interestingly enough, both of these characters share the same disadvantage of not being able to produce energy. Barbara was the first Hydra unit that we received in the game after completing Mondstadt's Archon quest, and as a Hydra unit, she was quite annoying. And this isn't even me being rude, as I've used her in so many of my videos before as my healer and Hydra unit back when I did a bunch of Abyss runs. Her skill would constantly apply a bit of Hydra to the active character every time it pulsed, resulting in the possibility of getting frozen when coming into contact with Cryo. And while Kokomi also had this problem, hers was only once per skill activation. Additionally, her burst had a massive cost at 80, and while could heal everyone by a massive amount, it was hard to get there since she produced no energy with her skill. All in all, Ocean Hued was the much needed upgrade that Barbara needed to not exactly become useful, but at the very least, better than when she was on Maidens. She's also like Barbara. Everything of hers went into healing without much else. Honestly speaking, I feel like Chi-Chi could out-heal most of all the healers, simply from how many sources of healing she has. Her skill passively heals, her burst can heal characters when other characters attack opponents marked by it, and she can even be used as a healing driver when she's normal and charged attacking while her skill is active. But then again, there isn't anything else she can give. When Ocean Hued came along, it honestly allowed her to be a pretty decent driver for a Superconduct Taser team, with her at the forefront. Since she was cryo, she could use units like Fischl and Beto to constantly trigger that and deal increased bubble damage. Not to mention, since all of her kit was focused on healing non-stop, the bubble would easily max out. Ocean Hued actually kinda sorta saved Chi-Chi. So that brings us full circle to Ocean Hued, Clam, and Maiden Beloved. These two artifact sets seem to parallel the quote-unquote good healers and the quote-unquote bad healers. Maiden Beloved sort of follows in the steps of the bad healers with its 4-piece effect increasing the healing received, essentially providing too much where it isn't really needed. Ocean Hued, on the other hand, provides a bizarre and interesting way to help healers, giving them a bit of an offensive push, giving enough additional healing with its 2-piece effect and some damage with its 4-piece effect. Ocean Hued happens to embody the just right mindset perfectly. It allows certain healers to contribute to the actual fight, even in a niche way. But even so, this damage isn't that great, otherwise everyone would start building healers for this set non-stop. This is due to the cap on how much healing each bubble can store. Additionally, the bubble will almost always deal less than the 30,000 cap, due to enemies having defense and sometimes physical resistances. So in order to max out the cap, and potentially deal more than 30,000, the best healers suited for this set would have to be either Cryo or Electro, along with having another teammate paired with them so that Superconduct can occur. Not to mention, the only time that Maiden would possibly be favored is if the healer just doesn't work well in Ocean Hued and can't proc its damage dealing 4-piece effect consistently enough. And even then, there are a plethora of alternative sets to give to that healer. The only way that Maiden Beloved could possibly ever take the lead is if there was a unit that has a built-in Ocean Hued Clam mechanic in their kit, where they would deal elemental damage based on how much they can heal. Then Maiden would work super well on them and end up buffing their damage. And that leads me to the last part of the retrospective. Ocean Hued is definitely way better than Maiden Beloved, but both of them are pretty negligible sets. Most healers have alternative sets that they can use, and even if they don't, they aren't exactly great healers, so they wouldn't be used a lot. Or they could just get by with not even using a set bonus, which means they could just use artifact stats and rely on that instead of the actual set effects. This has been shown with mainly sets like Noblesse, Tenacity, and 2-piece combos being better alternatives for these characters. I hope I've provided enough insight on healing and how these two artifact sets can have profound effects on them, albeit only every now and then. This video took me a really long time to get out due to me starting my new job and still dealing with a bunch of health issues, so I can only hope that this was worth the wait. I'm definitely have some new videos for you all soon, but yeah, it'll take some time to get out, and I'm grateful that you guys waited for this long. So yeah, this was Artifact Antagony, and I'm looking forward for the next episode I have for you all. You already know what button to press if you want to see more on a regular basis, and if you have something to say, I can only hope that it's nice. Thank you, bye!